Hey everybody, it's Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzer.
And I'm sleepy and sick.
And this is episode 126 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. Finally in our brand new apartment, Victoria. Yay, we're on a new couch and coffee location, everything. It's nice and new and it's exciting.
You said 162 for a second.
Yep. So yeah, it's exciting. What are we talking about today, Victoria?
Friend or foe?
You want something? Coffee? Adrenaline shot?
Yeah, probably.
Friend or foe and...
To have a heart.
Yep. So, yeah, it's the middle review for album 63. Core 2 episodes.
What do you think so far? Strong album?
I like it. I mean, it was like a pretty amazing start with Find a Penny Parts 1 and 2. So, one news item before we go. The World of Odyssey Oddcast that we promoted before recently is going on hiatus for a while because Charlie needs someone else to host with. So, if there's any of you out there who are like, boy, I sure wanted to go on a video and talk about Odyssey on the internet and people listen to me.
The interweb?
Yeah, then, contact him via channels and such. Go to the Adventures in Odyssey, or World of Odyssey podcast stuff.
You said that like you were Morty. Like...
That's what I aspire, Victoria.
Yeah.
Go find Charlie Liggett and be like, hey, I want to do podcasting with you, and then that'll help. So until then,
we've been the Adventures in
right
Odyssey Oddcast.
Yeah. So that's on hiatus for the moment until that stuff can get sorted out. That's it for news. We're interviewing Kathy Buchanan tomorrow morning. It's exciting. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
New school year for Victoria. New apartment for both of us. It's good stuff.
You got new umbrellas today.
I did get new umbrellas
and I got
today.
New books.
You did. So, episode 827, Friend or Foe, written by Sam Suxieri. He's pumping up more episodes. What happens, Victoria?
So, in this episode, they announced that a character... No, that's Have a Heart, never mind. Okay, in this episode, they have Jules, and it's a little bit Novacom-y, kind of like with
They definitely don't
Audrey.
use Novacom music at all in the episode.
It's a little bit like Audrey and Erica's plotline. Aubrey, yeah. I'm so tired. Aubrey and Erica's plot during Battle Lines.
Under the Influence.
Yeah. But the album's Battle Lines and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's with Jules and name
Valerie Swanson.
Yes, her. And Buck's in this episode too.
Yep. Anything else you got to say about it?
Valerie tricks Jules into thinking they're friends, so Jules will buy Valerie everything. Literally everything.
Literally anything and everything.
Anything and everything. Using Bill's money. So...
He's not using it.
Yeah.
He's just...
Not anything worthwhile, at least.
He's just buying mail-order brides.
Pretty much. So, like... Spending on Valerie is a better thing to do with it.
Honestly, probably.
And then Buck's a sweetheart in this episode.
He really is.
As always. My baby boy. And he does good things. He is a good boy in this episode. Good child. And it ends. Oh, and Jules is horribly in debt to Connie. I can't believe.
And she starts working at Wit's End.
Yeah, she starts working at Wit's End, which is not followed up in any other...
Yeah, it might be followed up in the future.
Not yet.
We'll talk about it later. Buck...
So it's literally like Aubrey at the end, or working at Wit's End.
Exactly, yeah. At the beginning.
It's like I take all these kids who are in debt and I give them money
That's how it works. Yeah, that is how jobs work, generally speaking.
He's like, they're desperate, so I can pay them anything.
What's like Tom Nook from Animal Crossing? Gets his hooks in ya. Buck talking about Mr. Skint is always sad, and I'm like, can we please just have one episode with Buck where he doesn't need to like use his knowledge of cons from the past? Because I'm like, let him be free. Let him have one moment of his life where he doesn't have to think about the past and think about Mr. Skint and all that stuff. It's going to be such a rough time when Mr. Skint comes back.
I'm still waiting for Mr. Skint to show up.
But if Eugene or Katrina or both of them get to give him a good left hook, that would be so sad.
Oh, it should be Katrina. She got kidnapped because of him.
Yeah. So Valerie comes back, blast from the past.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
It's been like album 54, I think. Anger Mismanagement.
It hasn't been...
You're Too Kind.
Yeah, but you know who hasn't shown up even, like, since before then?
Tom.
Yeah, other than Tom. We got, like, my bro TP from Groundhog Day. Remember?
Well, yeah.
Priscilla.
Is that who you're saying hasn't shown up since then?
Yeah, Priscilla, and then also Emily's brothers.
Barrett.
Have
they not? They've shown up since then, right?
Were they in album 55?
Surely they were in 56, I think.
Oh, yeah, wait,
yeah,
were, never mind, they were in 56, because that's where Groundhog Day is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you talking about?
I thought Valerie's shown up since, or was To Sink a Sub her last episode?
She was in To Sink a Sub, she was in You're Too Kind, and she was in Anger Mismanagement, which were all in album 54.
Well, then...
I think she was not through this.
I miss Barrett and Priscilla.
I was confused because I thought you were saying that your OT3 was in this episode, and I was like...
OT3 and Bro T3.
I know.
Both. All of them. Everything.
So, yeah, immediately it was like, yeah, super Aubrey Shepherd, Erica Colburn vibes from the episode. I was
Except for, I don't really think it was, like, too heavy-handed that they were copying.
It was, like...
It was kind of reminiscent, but I wouldn't say that they were copying.
At first I was like, I hope this isn't too super much like it, especially because obviously it's not going to be as dramatic or consequential as Under the Influence was, which is like, what an episode. Connie, did you think Connie was coming down too hard on Jules?
About...
In the episode? At the beginning when she's like,
you
can't go out and you can't get that dress and everything.
Yes and no. Kind of.
Same.
How old is Jules? Is she 16?
She would be 16 by the end of the album, yeah.
Okay. Then, let's see, the first R-rated movie I ever saw was either The Terminator or Matrix.
Yeah, but those
that
are
was
old
back in grade
R's.
7.
Those are like old school R's, so they don't really, those wouldn't be R-rated today.
Yeah. No, some of them would be still.
I don't think The Matrix would.
Trying to think of R-rated movies I would have seen when I was 16. What grade was I at? Grade 11. I don't know. What did...
I'm not even talking about... I'm talking about, like, you can't listen to Chains of Despair music. Like, oh no, MCR is gonna destroy you.
Yeah, no, the music is fine. The music thing isn't that bad.
It was like... right at the beginning, I was like, Connie does seem to be coming down, like, awfully hard on Jules. Like,
yeah, I can kind of understand the movie thing for, like, at least until she's, I don't know, 1 or 2 years older. The dress thing also kind of makes sense, but, like, music...
I was hoping that this was going to be kind of like modesty is the best policy, or you got to be wise, where I was reminded of both of these because the episode ends with a compromise between the kids understanding their guardian's wisdom and the guardians understanding that maybe they need to actually listen to their kids and thoughtfully consider their side and not just like outright ban things without taking the time to understand what they are.
The things do end up getting banned at the end for both of those.
And how the guardians' views may be more a product of their time than an objective spiritual / moral constant, and they need to consider that. Not really. I mean, because in the end, George is like...
George doesn't... Like, Donna returns the outfits, and Robin doesn't listen to Bones of Wrath anymore.
Yeah, but there's a shared understanding future where the adults, like, apologize and like, you know, I shouldn't have handled that the way that I did.
Yeah, I know that they did that and that was good, but they still don't like...
That is a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always really liked the episodes being particularly balanced in that sense in album 13, that it was like, oh, like everyone was at fault. It wasn't just like, oh, kids, you should listen to your parents know everything 100% all the time, they're perfect. So I was like, I'm hoping this episode lands the same, because I do agree, like, thinking, I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess Jules is a kid, like a kid, which is hard to remember sometimes, and I'm like,
she acts very immature.
She does act very immature a lot of the time. So thinking about that, it's like, okay, Connie is right about some things, but the way that she's doing it, a lot of time
Connie
is like,
is very passionate and
you know what,
emotional.
You know what really irked me though, and Jules called her out on it, is when she's like, I was hanging out with Valerie, and she was like, oh, you're hanging out with Valerie? I was like, that is like really judgmental. Like, you don't, like, wow, Connie.
Yeah.
And Buck did the same thing. Like, you don't know if she was like, I mean, I thought about it, I was like, I guess Jules is in a lot more, like, morally compromised position than like what I would think of when I was a kid, and if I put myself in that place. So it's like, I understand a little more when I think about it if it wasn't me and it was Jules. But still, Connie just instantly is like, oh, something must be wrong with you because you're hanging out with her. I'm like, or maybe she could be trying to be a good influence on her, Connie. She's just, okay.
Buck did it with Dion.
Yeah.
And now Dion's like, we'll get into that.
So yeah, I was like, especially because in terms of stuff like the music and stuff, this isn't anything like Under the Influence in terms of it being very clear cut, where it's like, Aubrey she's skipping school and she's going to house parties, underage, drinking, driving
to jail,
driving without a license. That was very clear cut. Like, Aubrey's doing bad things that are like objectively wrong. And here it's like Jules is like, oh, I'm listening to emo music. I'm terrible. It's like, you know, she bought a fancy dress and wanted to go to a concert. Buck made it sound like the band and its fans were like pretty hard, like, which gave off the connotation at first that it was like a hardcore metal band or something like that. But then, like, fans. Valerie's interest and the song titles made it very clear that this is just an emo band. It's just like Panic at the Disco or whatever. Like,
it sounds like
Jules isn't gonna get shanked by some scene kids at the concert to get trampled underfoot in the Black Parade here. Like, I feel like things are getting blown a little bit out of proportion.
To me, it sounds like it is just like your stereotypical emo band or something like that, but the fandom is hardcore about it, and they get like kind of crazy, kind of like,
well, yeah, but the way Buck made it sound was like it was like all like big burly leather muscle men or whatever. And
honestly, I think in a fandom, burly muscle men versus fangirls and fanboys, like, what would you be more scared of?
Well, yeah, but we're not talking about on the internet.
No, you know I'm right. You know I'm right. They would be on the internet.
The point is, at first it was like, oh man, I really side with Jules here, but then after I thought more about it, I'm like, the audio format often makes it easy to forget how young Jules actually is. Like, she's literally an infant. And so taking that into account, I'm like, okay, that does tip the scales more in Connie's favor. I really liked how Jules' initial connection that she made with Valerie was actually really selfless. Like, she just gave her that concert ticket for free. She didn't even offer to like sell it back to her at a reduced price or anything. Yeah. She just gave it up freely. Granted, clearly, money is no object for Jules because the accounts of Bill's wealth grow by the day every time we hear about him.
Yeah. And he also has the Odyssey newspaper, if that's still a thing. It may not be. It might have been bought by like 50 other people by now.
Probably.
But,
so on that note, is I think the interesting difference between this and Under the Influence, which is the role reversal financially, which is like a key thing here, with Aubrey and Erica versus Jules and Valerie, because in Under the Influence, Erica had nothing to gain in material wealth by becoming Aubrey's friend. Erica was already the wealthy friend, and she was frequently buying things for Aubrey and trying to encourage her to become more financially independent so she didn't have to rely on her parents or Erica for money as much. Erica, ultimately, what she really wanted was a friend, and she was in a perilous place with her family and all the Nova drama that her father was going through. Valerie, conversely, stands to gain a heck of a lot from Jules' Veronica Lodge backstory. Literally every time Jules talked in this episode, all I could think of was Riverdale and the whole like, oh, I'm like a wealthy socialite from like a big city who knows all these celebrities, and I love to party all the time.
She's like,
but
I
now,
know all these actors, and I party with them.
But now I'm disgraced, and I've moved to this small town, and it's so boring, and nobody gets me. Which, I mean, is not at all how Veronica sounds in Riverdale. She's
I haven't
an excellent
seen
character.
Riverdale, so I'll just assume that's exactly how
That's
she
how one
is.
would assume that she is, but she was actually like very nice and great and selfless and a fantastic human being.
Comic Veronica versus
Exactly.
show Veronica.
The point is, I thought of that a lot, and I was like, this is here Valerie's trying. She stands to gain a lot, because Veronica has her endless daddy's credit card and flaunting her celebrity name drops from her previous life in the big city. This relationship began with Jules giving away a concert ticket, and then continued on with not-so-subtle hints that she wanted Jules to buy her a dress and shoes, and why not? You have your dad's card. So I was like, we may later see Valerie have some more personal social motive for this alliance, but at the moment it seems to be purely material. And I was like, that seems a little cliche, because I thought that Erica and Aubrey's friendship had a little more like interesting depth to it, because you'd expect...
I really like Erica as a character.
You would
I wanted her to return for a long time.
Trope-wise, I would expect things to be like it was in this episode, where it's like, oh, I want to be your friend, but I'm using you for your money. That's why I thought Under the Influence was so interesting, because Erica was the one who already had the money, and she wasn't trying to like get anything out of Aubrey, except she actually genuinely wanted Aubrey's friendship.
Yeah, and she's the reason Aubrey got the job at Wits End in the first place, and like tried to get it.
Exactly. And then here is... Valerie's just like, I don't want to be your friend, I just want your money. And at first I was like, oh, okay, that's a little more cliche. But then it did get more interesting, because Valerie turned out to be way more cutthroat than I was expecting.
No, I expected it.
And I didn't expect her to go to the lengths she did, and I was like...
I didn't expect her to actually have copies of the receipts, but
She
I did expect her to like...
She literally kept the receipts, yeah. Victoria.
I expected her
just like
to,
the kids say.
Tell Mon Jules to Connie.
Yeah, so I got really annoyed when Connie was like super judgmental towards Valerie when she like called Jules out for spending time with her. I was like, I mean, Connie did end up being right, but she came out of the gate swinging at Valerie pretty unfairly.
But
from
it's
our
not
perspective.
Like Connie's ever been wrong about it.
Exactly. Yeah. But I was like, I get that she wants to be protective of Jules, because she knows Jules is in a very like influenceable, malleable spot in terms of friends and influences and stuff. But still, I loved how the sweater back and forth. And Connie's like, "Where's my sweater?" She's like, "It's in my closet." Connie's like, "Of course. Where else would it be?" And then when she takes it, Jules is like, "You can grab your sweater. Just bring it back when you're done." I was like, "What an accurate sibling portrayal."
Yeah.
I'm really angry that Jules' horrific taste buds is a thing now.
Yep.
It's a thing.
She poisoned Valerie with it too. Do you think Valerie actually liked the food that she tried though? I'm
probably
not sure.
not. Probably not.
She was like, this is so good. Except for the way she said it. It could be like 50-50 chance. It was like she some likes kind of it or she doesn't
meat
like it.
And pastrami.
It was like bologna and mayonnaise.
Bologna and pastrami and barbecue chips and peanut butter.
And mayonnaise.
There's no mayonnaise.
Oh, it was like something very fatty.
The peanut butter is fatty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was like...
And she's like, Connie doesn't let me have this. And I was like, yeah, I wonder why.
I was like, I mean, Connie did side with you on the OJ and cookies thing, which is still positively abhorrent, but... it's just... Honestly, it is pretty funny if that becomes like an actual like character trait that Jules just has like the most horrific
Oh my gosh,
buds.
it'd be funny if when she's older and she's having a baby, she actually has normal eating habits.
Her cravings are just like, I just want a ham sandwich with nothing else on it.
And everyone's like, something's wrong with her.
That's funny. Yeah, so you said, like, it was really Novacom-y. Even when they were listening to the Chains of Despair album, the music cue that led out of that scene was, like, textbook Novacom instrumentation.
See, I would have made the Novacom connection anyway, but we were spoiled before we got the chance to listen to it. That someone said to us that
I had already listened to it.
I hadn't listened to it yet, and I was told that it was a lot like
Under the Influence.
And Erica's relationship, and I was like, darn it, I know what to expect going into this.
The best part of this episode was the announcer over the intercom for the can dry.
That was great. That was it. He did multiple announcements.
Yeah, there was three announcements. Yeah. After the first one happened, I was like, "Oh, that was pretty funny." He was like continually trying to explain the concept of the can.
He was like, "No, it's canceled. Just don't bring anything anymore."
Oh, high school. It was really good. So yeah, Valerie finally snaps. She does a 180 like that. I was like, "Dang, girl, you already had that knife pressed between Jules' shoulder blades."
Buck was so good in this episode, though.
He was such a good person.
And, like, the way that Jules was like, how about you help me con Valerie? And I was like, no, this isn't going to end up well. It's not a good idea. And I thought Buck was going to do it. Buck was like, nope. And then he walked away, and I was like, oh my gosh.
She asked that. I was like, Jules, no, you do not dare ask Buck to con Valerie. You will not drag him down into your crap. Don't you dare make him do that. I thought you were better than this.
And then he doesn't. And I was like, that's my son.
Ugh.
But then another part of me was like, wait, why didn't you do that? How dare you?
Yeah. So
I'm glad he didn't, though.
Valerie turned. She was keeping all the receipts and everything. I knew, obviously, she would turn on her at some point, but I didn't think she would be so explicitly blackmail about it, like, immediately. I thought she'd try and be like, oh, no, I'm your friend.
No,
see, I'm
after what she did in Kidsborough and, like,
as soon as she flipped,
she is a viper, like...
Yeah, but I thought she would be more, like, subtle about it. Like, as soon as she was like, I mean, what if you paid for it? And she's like,
she's vision.
What if I killed your family?
She, like, tried to choke Nelson to death in Kidsborough, basically. So, like, I would put nothing past her. She's, like, a tiny psychopath. Like, a small, growing up to be Norman Bates
I was
killer.
like, if Valerie ever teams up with Maury... This
whole town is
they
screwed. Would be a power couple for
earlier in the episode, like I said.
Do you think they would like each other and gravitate towards each other, or they would kill each other?
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, I want to see one of those like versus movies, but it's Valerie versus Maury. I really want that.
Yeah.
Forget Emily versus Maury.
It's like the opposite.
I want Valerie
it's the classic versus
Maury.
movie thing where at first they fight with each other, but then they team up to take out the entire planet.
At first, no, but it'd be the opposite, though. They team up for like 30 seconds, and then they just...
No, I mean, because versus movies is usually like, these two good guys fight with each other, but then they have to work together to defeat the bad guy. In this case, it'd be
usually. Like Alien versus Predator.
Batman v Superman, Captain America Civil War.
I'm talking about like versus, like horror movies.
Well, okay, I was talking about... hero versus movies, but
no,
this would be the
I'm talking about like Alien versus Predator and Freddy versus Jason. Which I have not seen either of those.
It would be a bad team up. Earlier in the episode, like I said, I was disappointed that this seemed to be a simple materialistic grab for Valerie, which is much more shallow than Erica's personal motivations for influencing Aubrey. But once Valerie showed her hand, she turned out to be much more of a cunning blackmailer than I was anticipating, and I was like, now I'm intrigued.
I like that there's a female bully character, because we've never really gotten one of those in Odyssey.
We've got some. Or the election deception.
Yeah, but that was one episode.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah. But we got, like, a reoccurring
one.
We always get, like, mean male young characters, but never any female ones.
Who is in the election in album 13? The one, who was the one who was like, you can't be on the cheerleading squad and stuff like that. She was in a couple episodes. What's her name?
Are you talking about the one from Friends, Family, and Countrymen?
No. I'm talking about album 13, I said.
Yeah, I know, I thought you were confused.
Who's, no, it's the Not a Question of Loyalty. It's,
I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
And she's like, no, I won't go to the party and stuff. And she's like, then you can't be a cheerleader. You fail. Good day, sir. The point is, she was in a couple
Producers is so good. Even if you don't like it.
That's not from the producers, but
yeah,
alright. That's Willy Wonka.
Oh, wait. No, it's Gene Wilder either way.
Yeah, I know.
It's Gene
But it's
Wilder.
not...
Whatever, it's Gene Wilder. Either way.
It's The Courage to Stand, is what I was thinking of.
I thought you were going to start playing.
Shannon Everett is who I was thinking of.
What about the girl from...
She was also in a class act.
What about the one
She's
from
like,
Friends, Family, and Countrymen?
Star.
I want to say her name's like Barbara or something.
Oh, yeah.
And then she's also like, she's like, I have acting like grease paint in my veins or something like
That's
that.
not her.
Yeah, that is. It's the same person.
I can't remember anyone's names today, and it's really
embarrassing. I can't either.
Who was in For Trying Out Loud? It was one of the movie star spoof names. Brenda Fraser.
Yeah, Brenda Fraser is the one who's in class. No, it's...
It wasn't.
The one where Trent does...
It's not Called On in Class.
Called On in Class, yeah. She's in Called On in Class.
It's not Brenda.
Yeah, it is.
Let's check.
You're gonna be right. You're gonna be... Brenda Fraser!
Well,
I remember because that was the only episode where she wasn't, like, a huge jerk. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost like she's a character.
Okay, so, back to the thing. I absolutely melted when it was like, Buck is like, oh, I did real well on the geometry test. Eugene's been teaching me songs to remember geometric volume formulas. And I was like, oh. And he mentioned calculating conical volume, which meant obligatorily I had to make this meme, which I'm super duper proud of.
I made a meme, which will show up later.
I was like, as soon as I heard the line, I was like, it's perfect. It's perfect in the sense of what the meme actually means. It doesn't make any sense, but the fact is those formulas on there are for calculating the volume of a cone given fixed lateral height. So, in a very literal sense, it's perfect. And Eugene and Buck are going fishing again.
Yeah, they go fishing a lot, and I like that they have something that they do together often.
Yeah.
My next thing to say is about once they're at the party.
Okay, so
I'll let you say whatever you want to
yeah,
say about Buck and Jules.
Buck and Jules, I'm really glad that they're continuing to have this friendship development through, like, the solidarity of their different pasts with similar strains kind of thing. It's fascinating to me because they're extremely similar in their storylines, but also, like, complete opposites of each other.
I think they complement each other's characters really well. I'd say they're character foils for each other, maybe.
I guess so, yeah. The fundamental differences in their pasts have led Buck and Jules to be in the same situations in town, but have completely opposite perspectives about Odyssey and its people and their guardians, even though they're both working through a lot. They're both doing it very differently, which allows them to grow off of each other, although it is mostly Jules growing off of Buck, and Buck, like, growing through mentoring and being a friend to Jules.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, Jules.
I'd agree with that.
Jules strikes me very much as, like, the nation of Israel in the Old Testament, where she's constantly in this sine wave of, like, rebelling and then get bailed out by Buck and Connie and then turning against them to be betrayed by the rest of her acquaintances and decisions and then having to be bailed out in repentance again over and over. But, I mean, that's life for all of us, really. So they go to the party.
They go to the party and...
Did you notice how, because when Buck earlier, he was like, does Valerie even have any other friends besides you because you buy stuff for her? Did you notice then when Valerie was talking about who she was inviting to the party, she was like, it's you and me and my cousin and a bunch of his friends and stuff, and there wasn't actually, like, any people she was friends with?
I never thought about that. But I was surprised, going back to, because I just remembered something, when they're fighting over who will pay for the limo, I didn't think that Jules would actually take up Buck's advice to try and get Valerie to pay for something so soon after Buck had a fight. I was like, man, she's gonna ignore what he said, and then it won't be until, like, close to the end of the episode, but she does it, like, immediately after, and I was like, yeah, Buck can still get
Well, I mean, she wasn't going to do it until she noticed the way Valerie, like, assumed, like, oh, you'll pay for this, give me your dad's credit card information.
Yeah.
And then she was like...
That's the face of the guy who does the Bricks and Feathers video.
No, that's the look of, like, deep existential dread. Deep in the core of your being.
No, I was thinking of a different picture of the lady, the ponytail. Anyway, so I didn't think that Valerie and all those other people would be able to leave so quickly after...
Yeah, they got out of there.
They got out there so fast. I thought they were going to be stuck there and they were all going to have to rally their money and be like, okay, we don't have enough, and then they were all going to be put in, like, holding, just like
it's funny.
Aubrey was. But, No, they just, like, Batmaned out of there. You don't even
It's funny because
see 'em.
the way I was picturing it, a couple weeks before I first listened to this, on the RT podcast, Bernie was describing a big, like, group meal that he and a whole bunch of other, like, major social media influencers had at this restaurant in Austin.
Did they all disappear on him?
No. But he was saying, like, this restaurant used to be a bank that was converted into a restaurant,
Okay.
and the room they were in is, like, their, like, most expensive, like, room to dine in, and it's inside the vault. And so it's like you have like the giant vault door, and then you like eat inside, and walls are, I assume there's still safety deposit boxes and stuff like that. And so in my mind, I was picturing this room as like one door, and she was just outside this door. So I was like, surely they can't all flee out of there with no one noticing. But then I was like, oh wait, normal rooms have more than one exit.
The place that they described they're gonna have the party, to me, it in my brain looked like the Super 8 in Castlegar.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking of like one room that the summer reading club, when I was a little kid, used to have pizza in before we went into the pool.
Yeah.
And that room only had one door.
Yeah,
so
I was picturing
thinking
a one-door
it only
room.
had one door too. And then I was thinking like there's no way they can get out of this, and then they're just gone.
Exactly.
So,
I was like, as soon as...
And I figured, like, even if there was a second door, people would catch them.
As soon as Jules went to talk to them, I was like, if Valerie dines and dashes on Jules, I'm going to be having some stern words with the Swansons. And then they leave, and then Connie shows up because Jules got cut off and Bill ratted on her. So Connie shows up. And then Jules says, you didn't even know I existed until your mom's funeral.
I was like... Oh, Fred.
I was like, that was...
It was so harsh.
That was the lowest possible blow.
Harsh.
That was lower than anything Valerie's ever pulled.
It was so harsh. I couldn't believe she said that. I was in shock when I first heard that.
Yeah,
part.
I could not believe she said that.
I was just like, how dare you say those words?
Yeah, the episode for Jules really ended on a very, like, unresolved note.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I hope you figure out who you're, like, you know that we're your friends. She's like, well, I don't, and leaves, and that's basically where it ends. But Buck, the sweetheart and champion of our
boy.
lives, he
Sweet
comes,
baby boy.
he takes all of the stuff, and he returns it, and he tells the Swansons what happened, and he gets, like, most of the debt paid back. And Jules, like I said, is working at wit's end to pay off the rest of her debt. I was like, things are happening.
Yeah, but they don't say it was Buck. So,
oh, that's true.
Yep.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows who it could have been?
I love how Connie just goes over to Buck. She's like, yeah, there's this kid who looks just like you, but it wasn't you, obviously, because we don't know who it was. And Buck's just like, oh, I wonder who it was. And Connie's just like, yeah, I don't know. And leaves and the episode ends. I'm glad that, because we've talked about many a time before how we don't like it when characters do things like that aren't acknowledged, that it was them. And so, even though it wasn't technically acknowledged, it was Buck.
So...
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. Everyone knows.
Alright, so we know what's gonna, like, we know Crash Course is gonna involve Buck and Jules, and we talked about that before. So one would assume that some of the stuff left hanging here will resolve.
Hopefully.
In Crash Course. In terms of Jules being like, hey, maybe the people who care about me don't suck and all hate me and have the worst in mind for me. And stuff.
Maybe
and like I said,
emo music isn't that.
So, yeah, for the Buck and Jules dynamic, because most of their episodes so far have been, like, episodes together where they're working through the same thing at the same time, and it's always Buck who's like, I have all the experience from Conan, so I know what to do, and also I'm, like, a more...
Mature?
More emotionally mature person, so I listen to Mr. Eugene and Miss Katrina, and Jules, you should do the same thing. And he's more like always mentoring to her, and there's not a lot of reciprocity in that. So I'm hoping that, not that I want Buck to suffer terribly, but I want to see more like back and forth in terms. I want them to more learn stuff from each other, because it feels right now it's just like Jules learning from Buck, and the way that the relationship is presented, you'd think it would be more of a back and forth. Yeah. One's the messy one, and one's the one.
We watched Hitman's Bodyguard last night, the entire time we just kept on saying, one's the messy one and one's the neat one in like a commercial
in regards
Hallmark
a line from
narrator voice.
Nostalgia Critic with regards to it was the Ralph guy who said that.
Who said what?
Ralph. That line. One's the messy one and one's the neat one.
When for what?
For that Lifetime movie review video. That's what it was
right,
from.
Yeah. I was just saying that in general.
It's such
but,
a common trope for pairing characters together. Like in terms of like, it's literally messy and literally neat in terms of like a lazy way to exposition that characters are opposite of each other and that they need to learn from each other. And that's not what I'm saying that this is. I'm just saying, it's like, I want more back and forth in terms of they both need to learn things from each other. I
feel like Buck is more emotionally mature. Either that or he's just like so closed off that he...
It's a little both.
Yeah. And then
actually,
Jules,
it's a lot of both.
Yeah. Jules is kind of more... I don't know how to say this. Mature. In that she acts like she has everything together, but she doesn't necessarily. Yeah, there are some things that she definitely is mature about, but I feel like it's mostly intelligence and not really emotional, kind of like how it is with Buck. I don't know, what do you think?
I mean,
I think Buck is a lot more closed off than Jules is. He's a lot more emotion. He has a lot more walls built up, but that's understandable because of everything he's gone through. And Jules is a lot more open about her feelings, which is why we've had more problems with Jules than we have with Buck, because Buck doesn't want to acknowledge his feelings, and Jules does too much acknowledgement of her feelings.
I wouldn't say, though, that it's like, it's just Buck is like bottling everything down, because that's not the case either. Everything. It's not like he's having the same feelings as Jules, but not expressing them.
Yeah.
Because he is genuinely grateful to be in the situation that he's in compared to where he's been.
But there are some things that he's not doing.
It's true. Which, I feel like Eugene could work on being more vulnerable towards Buck too. Like, it took him so long to even be like, hey, I was also a foster child, and Buck's like, really? I'm like, how could you not have told him that yet?
Yeah.
That's kind of like a very instrumental kind of bonding thing and understanding each other in your situations.
Yep.
Eugene.
I kind of wish Eugene was in this episode, but I understand that there's not enough time for that. It's just every time Buck shows up, I'm also like, I want Eugene to be there too.
And Katrina.
Katrina. I feel like...
And Leonard. And Everett.
I feel the need for more Eugene and Buck stuff, because I feel like they have more to work on in their relationship than Katrina and Buck. So that's why if I have to choose one of them to be with Buck in that episode, I'm always pretty much going to pick Eugene. Because I feel like they have a lot more stuff to work through.
That's true. Katrina's the more emotionally mature one.
Yeah.
Between the two of them.
One of them's the neat one.
They're both neat ones, Victoria.
One. Yeah, one of them's neater emotionally.
That's true. So, final thoughts on Friend or Foe?
I think it was good. I don't think it was copying under the influence like some people might claim it to be. I think that it did enough of its own stuff not to be labeled as such. I like the way that it expanded on Jules' character. Buck is a saint. I love him so much. Valerie is interesting. Doesn't matter if you don't like her. Doesn't matter if you do like her. She is an interesting character. Even though she's a horrible person. Connie still has things to work on in the whole parenting thing, but she is working on them. Yeah. And Jules works at what's up now, which will hopefully be mentioned again at some point.
I'm glad that we have, we had at least one episode where we had Connie with Pastor Wilson, what's his face?
Knox.
Yeah. Where it was like, this is an episode for Connie to learn more about her own development and her relationship with Jules. There wasn't even anything on, it wasn't like, this is exclusively for Jules to learn how to be better, or Jules learns to be better and Connie learns a little bit of lesson too. This was like an episode exclusively for Connie to learn how to be better at what she's doing. So I'm glad that it's going both ways in their relationship as well.
I don't know what to rate it. Say 4 out of 5. It might be a little high, I'm not sure, but...
So I enjoyed this episode. An episode with Buck and Jules is like, how can you not enjoy it unless it's Legacy Part 2?
Legacy Part 2 had good things, but it was mostly like in the last minute and not before.
So, yeah, more development, more Buck, being an excellent person, and Jules learning things and having, like, slowly chugging out more development for Jules as she learns more about her relationship with herself and with the town and with Connie and with Buck is excellent. We brought back Valerie, and she was stone cold, and I loved it. It started out being like, wow, this is really under the influence-y, and then ended being like,
it blossomed into its own.
It ended being like, it's
flower.
still pretty under the influence-y, but it's its own thing. It's different. It's different. I still obviously.
It's not a clutter and we're your treasure.
No, it's not a Take It on Trust and 8 other episodes, or Cycle of Fear and Blood, Sweat, and Fears.
Yep.
Yeah, I liked the episode. I feel like the similarities were a little bit too much with Under the Influence, but it did strike it. It did stand out in a couple different ways. And I'm a sucker for Buck and Jules both as characters.
No, it bothers me that in Legacy, like, their friendship has been building nicely, but in Legacy, they're just like 2 seconds away from making out on every surface available.
Yeah.
And then that's never come back since then. They just went back to their old relationship.
And I'm like, what was this? Dial it back again.
It's just like flowing nicely.
Victoria,
and then it's like, it goes to 10 and then it goes back down to where it was. And it's like, what happened?
It's called the power of musical theater.
Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense.
Neither does musical theater.
Yes, it does. Shut your mouth. What's your review rating? What's your review rating? Number. Give a number. Give a number.
I'm gonna give it a 3.8.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, sure. So now we're talking about...
Have Heart.
Yeah.
We don't have to stop.
Yeah, okay. Keep going. Okay, so
in...
Next up is episode 828. Have a Heart, written by Marshall Younger.
And so in this episode, a character comes back really hoping it was Jay, but it's actually Dion. He hasn't been gone that long, but apparently he has in
Speaking of character surprise appearances,
Zoe.
This is I was talking about the main duo for this episode is Buddy and Zoe in an album episode together. Buddy and Zoe and Dion. I was like, what Twilight Zone nonsense is this?
So
what a weird pairing.
What I was gonna say is Buddy has upgraded from OAC to actual show. Mm-hmm. And Zoe, everyone's favorite best friend, is in this episode.
And Olivia isn't even there.
Yeah, I know. She's upgraded too. And
was she there last time? I don't remember.
She is doing some more of her reporting stuff. And
she was in the election episode. Park for President.
Yeah, she became a reporter like a couple episodes before that, though.
Yeah.
So this episode has Dion coming back, and he's like...
He has a last name now.
He has a last name. He's his own fully fledged character, and I really like him now. I mean, I kind of liked him before, but I was also kind of worried about his mental state, or something.
You were.
Because he was, like, electrocuted 6 times or something. And
I really liked Dion before, and he came back, and it's like...
I love him now.
Nice.
I love him.
This episode...
It made me love Dion.
The thing that would make this episode perfect is if you just... subtracted Buddy from it.
Actually, Buddy's imagination wasn't bad in this episode. It did not bother me.
It was a lot better.
The Kermit thing was weird. We'll get to that. Okay, let me summarize the episode. So Buddy comes back. We find out that he had to get a Dion comes back. We find out that he had to get a heart transplant. And now he's, like, being super nice to everybody after that. And then Buddy's just like, oh my gosh, it must be because he got the heart of a nice person. And I'm like, stupid idiot child. And so then they go and they research the person who passed away. They're from Connellsville. And they learn about the person whose heart it was that Dion got. And then Dion, like, goes on this emotional journey, but, like, while he's gone, so he's really changed now. And in, like, a scene that almost made me cry while listening to it at work, Dion goes to Wits End, and he meets the mom of the kid who died, and he brings, like, a stethoscope so she can listen to her son's heart. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this. I thought Maury was going to be in this episode. He was not. This is not a Maury episode. I think, show my meme, Dev.
Yeah.
I think the writers forgot that he exists. Emily hasn't shown up.
Or remind Kathy tomorrow.
Matthew. Any point. Yeah, we can remind her that Maury's a thing. This episode was really good. It was really emotional. I did not expect to have such an emotional episode in this season.
So, yeah, Dion comes back and they're like, he's been gone for 4 months. Where's he been? Zoe's like, I know how to find out. I'll interview him for the paper and write about an article about why he was gone. I was like, no, Zoe, see, when someone had something personal happen to them that lasted 4 months, and you know from Whit that it's a personal, sensitive topic.
That Whit does not feel comfortable sharing and saying, you need to talk to Dion yourself.
The way to get it out of them is not by being, hey, tell me about it so I can write about it in the newspaper. Children.
Oh, Zoe specifically.
So, my best prediction in history, last episode, I was like, what? Is Have a Heart gonna be about, like, a heart transplant thing?
You were right.
I was right.
I did not think you would get that right. You were gonna hit me in the face.
I completely called it. Ha! It's crazy that we didn't know about that, like, last we knew, Dion was taking the fall for Maury's locker stunt in The Key Suspect.
Yep.
So I was like, I wonder if Maury caused his myocarditis to keep him silent. Hush him up.
What?
Yeah.
No.
He's like, I need to keep Dion hush about this, and so he gave him myocarditis.
No, stop talking. Man, that was really heavy. I can't imagine what that would do to a kid that age.
Yeah. Like,
I'm reading your notes.
I know, I can see that. Yeah, like...
Poor Dion.
I know, like, at that age, he's like 12, 13-ish, and
he's probably older than that. He's probably like 14 or 15. He's in Bucks in Jules' grade.
Yeah. You're right. Spending 4 months, being pulled out of school for 4 months to be in the hospital, like, barely able to move, and being like, the doctors being like, there's nothing we can do for you before you finally get a heart transplant. That's...
And I'm like, my son, Dion became my son because of this episode. He's like in my stadium full of children from things now. Yeah.
So, to bring it back to talk of hearts and science, admittedly, I made this comment a little bit prematurely. I heard Katrina start to say, like, some of you students have frogs and some have lizards. And I paused it and I was like, hold up, those are very different animals. One is aquatic, like, in terms of dissection, one is aquatic, one's not. They have different heart structures, respiratory structures, dermal versus epidermal scales. And then she's like, you can rotate to see them all. And I was like, oh, okay, good, never mind.
Okay, no.
Buddy, I loved how, as she's describing it, Buddy is, like, very clearly stoked. And I was like... I
didn't expect him, of all people, to be so excited about dissection.
I appreciate it, though, because I was like, I'm obviously in this scenario. I am always stoked to do a good dissection, like last night.
Yeah, but Buddy...
I was like, I'll even bring...
don't. I told you not to.
I'll even bring my own scalpels from home. No fuss, no muss.
I didn't expect Buddy, of all people, to be so hyped about a dissection.
It is a good point, yeah.
He just he doesn't really seem like that kind of character. Also,
he's Mr. Scaredy Pants at everything.
Katrina said that, like, some kids had frogs, some had lizards, and she was like, buddy, you have both. And he's, like, so excited. And I was just like, excuse me, lady. If I have both, that means I'm gonna have to dissect both, answer the questions on the sheets for both, and label and draw diagrams for both. And I do not have that much time in, like, probably not even an hour-long class to do all that
Depends
work.
on how much dissection you're doing.
It's usually, like, a lot from my experience. Like, I would not have... And Zoe doesn't even want to do any of it.
That's true.
So,
she's a terrible lab partner.
She's just like, oh, I can't look. And that's me for the first, like, minute of a dissection. But then I get over it and I stick the eyeballs of the crawfish on the little sticky prod, and then I chase people around the room with them, and they scream and run away. And then Riley's like, what's wrong with you? I thought you were nauseous. And I was like, I was, but now I'm not.
Yeah, once you start getting the skin off, then it's like, oh, it doesn't look cute anymore. I'm fine with this now.
Yeah.
So the lizards and the frogs start coming to life and talking, and at first I was like, haha, Geico joke.
Oh, and that was a Geico joke?
Yeah, because the first thing he said is like, don't worry, I'm not going to sell you car insurance, because he was a lizard.
Oh, that makes more sense. Okay, why did one sound like Kermit? I was like, of all frogs, you could have been dissecting. Why did you make one of them sound like Kermit? What is wrong with you?
So you have the Geico Gecko and Kermit, and I was like... And also, I was like, Mr. Lizard, to go back to biology, I was like, Mr. Lizard, you really do not want a frog heart. They're not crazy different, but the frog heart only has one ventricle with no partial divisions into the cavum venosum, cavum pulmonae, and cavum arteriosus, so you lose the ability to control how much blood you pump to the pulmonary versus aortic arches. And also, you aren't supposed to have a conus arteriosus as an adult. You lose it when you're young in reptiles, and it would just be a mess. Your body would not enjoy it. And I was like...
Did you have to look up all those words, or did you just know them?
I couldn't remember the names. I had to check my notes. I didn't have to use the internet. I just
pulled it out. That's a little comforting.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. And then Kermit shows up. That's my favorite of your notes.
That was one of those notes where I wrote when I was like typing it like... So, yeah. At first I was like, yes, buddy, excited for these dissections, a boy after my own heart. And then immediately he's like, what if Dion's nice because of the heart that he got? And I was like, oh boy, okay, so buddy, it's like, just slow your roll there, kid.
And then Kermit and the Geico Lizard are like, wait, why should we try and take each other's hearts? We can take a human heart. I'm like, you idiot, that heart is bigger than you. If it falls on you, it will literally squish you. Yeah. It's not going to fit in any capacity.
And it's much more different from your hearts than the differences between amphibian and, actually, I think inuran hearts are specifically different than most amphibians.
I've dissected a frog heart.
They're tiny, yes.
That big.
So, yeah, I was like, okay, so Buddy has literally zero understanding of science whatsoever, but I appreciate his enthusiasm, at least, if nothing else.
Because there is nothing else.
Yeah. And then Zoe's like, we can figure out who the heart came from and then go and talk to them. I was like, okay, you are venturing into massively invasive territory. Like, that is way overstepping your bounds.
Honestly, I feel like they shouldn't have done a lot of things they did in this episode.
They shouldn't have done most of the things that they did.
Yeah, she shouldn't have written the article. They shouldn't have, like, tried to find that kid. Especially since you're not supposed to know who the donor is.
You're not supposed to know.
If they don't tell you the hospital and they tell you you're not supposed to know, you're not supposed to look that crap up. You're not.
And, yeah, it's like they did that, and it happened, and I was like, okay.
And Buddy was just like, he has this fantasy about this weird Frankenstein-y thing where he's getting, like, all these different body parts and things from different people so he can be, like, the ultimate superhuman. I love the line they gave where it's just like, you're gonna look like a freak, ridiculous. But you're gonna be so strong. That made me laugh. But, like, and then he was just like, man, maybe I can get the heart of someone really tough. And so he's like, yeah, the heart of someone who died. And he was like, oh, right, these people are dead. And I was like, oh my god.
I do like, too, how Zoe pointed out, like, when she told Dion that she figured out who it was, she's like, this may not be my place to tell you. And I was like, gee, you think?
Yeah.
Good deduction, news lady.
Maybe she made some of those deductions because she's friends with Emily. Learned how to put things together.
Yeah, these less. It is because she's friends with Emily, because what she also learned was not learning, like, when you're crossing over boundaries, you shouldn't
Just
cross.
like Emily.
Yeah. So at least we have the emotional, like, meet up with Mrs. Dunlap and Dion. I was like, Dion's making me tear up now. I'm getting all choked up. I really wish this episode would focus more on Dion than on Buddy.
I know.
I feel like it would have been way more emotionally,
so
like, it isn't.
sad.
It's not just because Buddy's, like, imaginary vignettes, like,
Every
distract
single
from
time
stuff.
Dion came into the episode, he was like so quiet and so sad, and he did not say one silly line at all, and I was just like, oh,
yeah. It was like not
son.
only the Buddy takes away from it, but Dion's perspective is what I want here. That would be way more emotionally compelling to find out what his process has been going through this the whole time.
And I wish Buck was in this episode, because Buck and Dion's friendship, just, it's not even a thing anymore. It's not mentioned. It's not alluded to.
But imagine what it can be like now, Victoria.
Whatsoever. I wish it was.
It's the We Changed club stuff.
Dion, my son.
When Dion was talking about like
sad.
wanting Mrs. Dunlap to like him, it instantly reminded me of Mark Horton in A Lamb's Tale when he was telling that dad about like the good things that he does. He's like, I just want you to think that I'm worth your son's life. And I was like, even though obviously like Jensen didn't volunteer to die in Dion's stead, but still, you know the point. And then Dion brought a stethoscope. I was like, it's like that video headline I saw as a clickbait title, and now I'm losing it.
I was almost crying. I think I teared up a little bit.
I wish
emotional.
the episode could have let us focus more on the emotional conflict from.
I was also driving at this point. I was like, I can't drive and cry.
Oh no! I wish this episode would focus more on the emotional conflict from Dion's perspective. I really love A Lesson from Mike, but this episode adds so much to that similar dynamic for Dion in that his life was saved by Jensen's death, even though Jensen didn't choose to die. So whereas, you know, when it was A Lesson from Mike is like he died, but, you know, you still it wasn't really a personal connection to you super much, whereas this had a lot more like direct connection to your life. So I'm really looking forward to see what character development we can expect from Dion in the near future.
Yeah.
After this,
I feel like Dion is getting a lot of the character development Jay never got the chance to get.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I think this would have happened to Jay, but yeah. The bonus feature thing.
So that.
All the best parts from this episode were like copied directly from real life.
I did like how many clips they put in the bonus feature. So the last thing I was going to say, which it doesn't pertain to the episode theme, but I just thought it was kind of a little interesting that like stuck out just a little bit in the back of my mind.
Okay.
I was thinking about like, and I often think about this generally speaking, like how much technology has changed over the lifespan of the show and how it affects the storytelling. And just these were very normal lines delivered very normally in the episode, multiple times of kids saying like, oh, here I have the pictures on my phone. And the kids are like, text it to us. It happened twice in the episode, and it was just as normal can be. But I was just thinking about like, you know, the show is a broader thing. And it's like, it's crazy. It's like, especially
the show started and it was like, let me get my Walkman.
Even when that would have happened, you wouldn't expect. Even when kids start getting phones, I would expect from Odyssey, which is more like old-fashioned, that...
Untuck the halls.
I would expect that if kids that age were talking about like, oh, we all have cell phones, here, take this picture and text it to me and all that stuff like that, that there would be some kind of like under commentary to that about like, oh,
text it to me, but just know that everything hates you in life.
Oh, these kids and their technology, having phones super young, and they can't just print out a photo, wasting ink and paper, and bring it to school and hand it to someone else. I like that it happened multiple times, and it was just a normal line, and it was just normal, and it's sad to me.
Who wrote this episode again?
Marshall.
Okay.
It's sad to me that stuck out for being so normal because I expected someone to make a big deal out of it, but it wasn't. and then I made a big deal out of it. But it was just nice. It's nice just to be like, oh yeah, people have technology. That's a normal thing. The end. And like you said, bonus feature. Did you want to talk about that? What's in there?
It has Paul's the one who wrote this. Marshall. Sorry.
Paul doesn't work for Focus anymore.
I keep on thinking Paul writes literally everything. I don't know why. He doesn't even work there anymore. He doesn't even go here. So Marshall wrote this episode, and it has him and his wife, and his wife is a doctor.
Yeah.
And they are talking about this thing they saw on
Well, it was something
TV.
that happened to her. She's a pediatrician.
No, it wasn't.
It starts.
Okay, you tell it.
Okay.
I've only listened to it once.
They talk about the inspiration for the episode. So his wife is a pediatrician, and she's there, and she talks about this boy at her hospital who's waiting forever on a liver transplant, and then he finally got it, and like he didn't realize at first that the kid who donated it had died for him to get it, and he wouldn't have it otherwise. And Marshall had this idea about a kid thinking that they would gain the attributes of the person that they received the organ from. Which, honestly, at first I was like, wow, buddy, that is, like, so incredibly stupid. How could you think that? But then I thought about it, and I was like, that is a thing, actually, that, like, lots of people do believe, like, adults. And it does play into lots of works of fictions, like episode 2 this season of Rick and Morty, the premise of iZombie in and of itself.
What was episode 2?
Like, with the arm in the Rick Manson Stone, the Mad Max one. He got the muscle memory from the giant arm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you got someone's giant arm and it remembers everything they did.
What do you mean the premise of iZombie? Oh, with the brains and
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. This idea that like, oh, you like you take a part of someone else's body and it's like, oh, okay, now you have some sort of attributes from them. So it's like, you know what, that is actually a pretty common thing. So it's like, okay, I'll take off a couple deductions from Buddy. And then he talks about how the stethoscope scene specifically was inspired by an inspirational video of an identical situation that Marshall had seen on a morning show. Yeah, this is
what I was talking about before.
Yeah, I know. And I remember I also saw a very similar headline, which was actually a different story, I think, but like the same thing, where it was like, oh, like, here, I have your child died and I got their heart, and now here, listen to their heartbeat, and everyone cries.
I got your child's eyes, stare into mine, have a staring contest with me. I really like this episode.
It was really emotional.
It was really good. I like how it developed all the characters. I don't know if this development will go anywhere with them.
For Dion or for Buddy?
I feel like Dion's gonna stay developed. Buddy will be friends with Dion now, but I don't think Buddy's gonna develop any more beyond that.
Did you get
there isn't really anything else
annoyed?
So he's not gonna develop. The last line in the episode, if that's what you're gonna say, was terrible. Because earlier in the episode, it's just like, you know, Jesus changes people's hearts and stuff like that. And he's talking about, not literally, but he's saying, like, figuratively, and how Dion's changed because of what he's been through. And then the last line in the episode, well, like, it's really emotional and you're, like, crying and stuff, totally sucks you out of the moment like a high-speed vacuum cleaner. When Buddy says, you know, Mr. Whitaker, I think Jesus does change hearts. He just changed mine. And I was just like, oh, no. Why did you say that? It sounded so cheesy.
Also, Buddy, stop making this about you
for
one moment in your life.
I was just like, let Dion have this moment. I bet Dion and the mom heard him. And
then Dion turns around and he's like...
Every time you do one of these gestures, you put the picture.
Yeah, I know. I was annoyed by, at the beginning, when Buddy was complaining about Dion, how hyper fixated he was on the ear flicking thing.
Yeah, that was weird.
Because ear flicking, that's like, it's a very minor.
Also, that one fantasy was really weird. It was like, no, you have to sign this thing that says, Buddy's never allowed to have fun. And he can never have pizza and relinquishes all his rights to do things. And I was just like, okay, also I really like the fantasy where Dion was like a secret agent, and he's like, your goal is to make Dion's life horrible, and he's like, yes,
but
sir.
no, he was like,
And
like, your mission is done. Your mission to be the most annoying person on the planet to every living thing was an astounding success.
That actually made me laugh. Also, I liked that one because not only was it funny, Dion also was the only person in it next to the commander, so Buddy wasn't in it, like, overreacting about things. And Dion's voice actually sounded really cool in that part, so I was like, yeah.
No, I was...
But the one fantasy where Zoe, like, makes Buddy essentially Dion's slave, I was just like, why does Zoe have this much power over Buddy?
Yeah.
What happened? Is he actually her slave too, so she can sign over
Buddy
these
has
rights?
about as broad an understanding of the legal system and Irish folklore as he does about biology.
How is that leprechauns?
Because he was a leprechaun.
Dion
Dion was, yeah. He had like a little laugh and was playing Irish Celtic music, and he had an Irish accent, and he's like, "I sign it over, and then I'll do the interview with you."
Yeah.
He was supposed to be a trickstery leprechaun.
Zoe's a horrible person. Can we both agree on that?
In this episode, definitely. Yeah.
She was like played off as being really kind in what she was doing, but I was like, it's not your place to do this. You should just stop.
Even for Buddy, she told him after the fact, he's like, thanks for getting me on the bus to Connellsville. She's like, oh yeah, I just had to sign you up to carry all of the team's equipment and sold you into indentured servitude for a decade.
Terrible person.
BT dubs.
She's the worst.
Y'all have phones. Could have texted him first and let him know.
We can't use our technology, though. That would be
no,
terrible.
but the ear flicking thing, it really like kind of irked at me because the fact that
it was brought up way too much.
The fact that Buddy brought it up so many times made it sound like that's the only thing that Buddy did to him, which made it sound like Buddy was much less of a bully.
Dion did to him?
Sorry, that Dion did to him, which makes it sound like Dion is much less of a serious bully and emotional threat than he actually is.
It makes it sound like he's an annoying sibling.
It really downplayed what Dion did to Buddy severely, and that's why I was really annoyed by it. I was like, Buddy was trying to make the case to Wit that Dion was a menace. I'm like, you're really like just making the case worse for yourself, Buddy. You're just making yourself sound like a whiny wimp completely.
He is a whiny wimp.
I know, but he's making it sound like it more, which is impressive. It's a feat, Victoria.
I don't really have anything else to say. What would you give the episode?
This episode, very emotional, very touching.
It was a good episode. As much
good
as we
development.
Just
like I said, main thing I would change would be to focus on Dion's character instead of Buddy.
I feel like the reason they probably didn't do that was because not only Marshall wanting to point out how there are misconceptions about transplants.
Yeah, there was also this kind of like subtle organ donation lesson going in the background, which is good. It's actually obviously, sign up to donate your organs. It was just kind of like weird the way it was in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I feel like the Odyssey team probably would have thought it to be too heavy if it was all from Dion's perspective.
I want it to be heavy though.
Because I know, but
why didn't it make me cry?
Didn't make me cry. How dare you? It's usually you were like whining today over the fact that Kathy almost made you cry when you listened to another episode, which I won't say what it is.
No, I didn't make me cry, but I was like,
you were like upset over that, and now you're like, make me cry.
Yeah.
Make up your mind.
Yeah, I need that angst to burn me inside. Scorch my soul.
Do you ever do things just because you want to be angsty?
Don't we all?
It's the proper answer. Okay, what's your rating?
If it weren't for Buddy and for Zoe just being like major invasive, this would be such a good episode. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 because even though I feel like those are big flaws, like at its core, they still get all of the good stuff in there, even if it's not presented the way I wanted. Like the good, meaty, emotional stuff with Dion and his development and near-death experience and stuff with the mom and all that stuff. It's like it's still there. It's still good. It still feels.
I wish Dion was in the episode more.
Yeah, he's not in it a lot.
I'm also okay with Buddy being the main character in it. Because
what about how long the frog and lizard
that went on a lot too.
That was a long scene.
That went on way too long. I feel like they could have cut that a lot and added more stuff with Dion.
I like how you were pointing out. You're like, how is Buddy gonna have the time to do both of these dissections by himself and do all of the work? And then even under that pressure,
Zoe doesn't do anything.
Buddy, even under all of that time pressure already. And then Buddy just spends 10 minutes just staring down at the animal's scalpel and probe in hand.
Eyes in all of his classes because he doesn't do anything. He just spends all of his time for incompletes.
I thought you meant EYES.
No. Incompletes in all of his classes because he just daydreams.
Probably.
And he doesn't actually do anything.
What is your rating?
I think I'm going to give it a 4.7.
Cool.
Because, yeah, it does have its flaws. If it was a little bit less flawed, I would give it a 5.
That is how rating systems work, yeah.
Yep.
If it was a little less flawed, I would give it a higher mark. Thank you, Victoria.
Okay, episode over.
That's the end of the episode. What are we doing next time, Victoria?
We're going to do the last 2 episodes of the album.
Which are?
Albums are so short now.
Which are what?
BTV Revenge.
Revenge.
It's pronounced revenge, and it's
a dish.
best served cold. And Crash Course.
Correct. And then, of course, because it's the end of the album,
the overall album review.
Wee. Hi.
Episode over.
Yes, we'll do that next time. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And I'm a little bit more awake now, so it's good.
Hey. And goodbye.